This is how denial is packaged online. The wrongly accused bad boy and the successful woman who insists everyone else got it wrong. A love story, a man cast as misunderstood, and a beautiful influencer woman who says, "You do not know the full story." When the man in question has a guilty verdict for rape, something changes because there is already a victim whose life was irreversibly damaged. Social media is not a court. It does not weigh evidence. It does not hear testimony. And it does not protect victims. Hello, hello. Welcome back to Smart AF, the show where we cut through the noise and give you the facts straight up. Before we go any further, I want to be clear about what this conversation is focused on. It is not about judging relationships or telling people who they are allowed to love. It is about what happens when private loyalty becomes public narrative. And when brands and influential people choose to look away, adults can have private relationships, full stop. And people who have been convicted of crimes are still human beings. They are allowed to love and be loved. What changes everything is platforms. Influence turns private beliefs into public narratives, and public narratives have consequences, especially when a court has already delivered a guilty verdict. This episode looks at a case in New Zealand, but this is not unique to this country. Sadly, it happens all over the world. In this case, the person at the center of the public conversation was convicted of rape in New Zealand and sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. After serving approximately 2 years in custody, he was released on parole. That release did not mean the justice system stepped away. Parole came with strict conditions designed to manage risk in the community, including electronic monitoring for a fixed period following release, probation supervision, residence restrictions, and behavioral requirements. Over time, some of those conditions have expired, while the sentence itself continues in law until March 2026. That is the legal reality. What social media shows, however, is something else entirely. It shows normalcy, dinners, drinks, celebration. And that normalcy is often interpreted by audiences as exoneration. But the presence of a normal life does not rewrite legal outcomes. Parole is not innocence. The end of monitoring is not vindication. And visibility is not proof that the system got it wrong. Online, those distinctions collapse. A person appears free, relaxed, and socially rewarded, and that appearance is read as evidence that nothing serious ever happened. That is how accountability quietly fades, not through courts or appeals, but through optics. Yet he continues to deny the crime, publicly, confidently, and without acknowledgement of harm or expression of remorse. Meanwhile, the victim does not have the same freedom to speak. In New Zealand, complainants in sexual violence cases are often protected by suppression orders. That means she cannot publicly defend herself, correct the narrative, or respond to speculation, even as others speak about her motives with certainty. And even if she wanted to speak, lifting suppression is not a simple choice. It requires a formal application and carries real legal, personal, and safety considerations. Silence in this context is not evidence of anything. It is often the cost of protection. That imbalance matters, and then the story moves online. His partner, a successful business owner and influencer, publicly frames him as innocent. She speaks about having done her own deep research. She references documents the jury supposedly did not see. She talks about paying a private investigator to look into the case. None of that automatically means a wrongful conviction will be uncovered. Private investigators do not overturn verdicts in New Zealand. Courts do that. But publicly, the signal being sent is unmistakable. It is a signal of confidence in his innocence. And by extension, it is a signal that the victim is lying or mistaken. That is where the harm occurs. Because when a guilty verdict has been tested through New Zealand's appeal process and upheld, continuing to publicly deny it, especially through an influencer platform, does not exist in a neutral space. It reframes the narrative away from accountability and towards suspicion of the complainant. Denial is often framed as loyalty, as love, as standing by someone you care about. And on a personal level, that framing makes sense. But once denial becomes content, it stops being private belief and starts doing public work. Social media does not reward accuracy. It rewards emotion, relatability, and confidence. It rewards whoever tells the most compelling story, not whoever tells the most truthful one. This is how sympathy becomes a tool. Sympathy not for harm, but for the person convicted of causing it. And sympathy, when detached from accountability, starts to function like reputation laundering. And this is where the responsibility widens. It does not stop with the convicted person or the partner who defends him. It extends to brands that continue to collaborate, gift, and promote as if nothing is happening. Brands that trade on trust and credibility while helping normalize the public denial of a guilty verdict. Silence in that context is not neutral. It is participation. It extends to friends, especially those with platforms, who choose comfort over principle. Friends who say nothing because it is awkward, and worse, friends who publicly signal approval, loyalty, or belief in innocence after doing their own so called research, as though confidence and proximity carry the same weight as a jury verdict. That collective behavior sends a message. The message is that the law is optional, that accountability is negotiable. That denial, if delivered confidently enough and attractively enough, is a substitute for truth. And that is dangerous because it teaches audiences, and especially young audiences, like, that being convicted of rape is no longer a boundary, that it is something you can aestheticize, explain away, or simply outgrow with the right narrative. That if you say, I did not do it, loudly and often enough, the verdict becomes irrelevant. That is not rehabilitation. That is erasure. Erasure of harm, erasure of accountability, and erasure of the victim, who is expected to remain silent while everyone else talks with certainty. This is not bravery, and it is not justice. It is what happens when influence, loyalty, and profit quietly align, and when social media is treated like an appeal court. And when social media is used as a court of law, guilt is not carried by the convicted. It is carried by the victim. That's it for today's episode of Smart AF. And remember, making informed decisions is your right. So before you believe the hype, get Smart AF. See you soon. Thanks for listening. If you know someone who needs this info, please share this video with them. If you found this interesting, a thumbs up and subscribe would mean a lot. And tap the bell so you never miss an update. Disclaimer: this episode reflects my personal analysis and interpretation of publicly available information. It is intended for educational and commentary purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice.